They told me I didn't look like I belonged. Didn't sound like it. Didn't feel like it. 6 years ago, I stood in the marble lobby of Alden and Royce Global, the family empire I'd been born into but never welcomed into. My palms were sweating through the sleeves of my thrift store blazer, my resume printed on the back of my last clean assignment paper. I had just finished grad school. Top of my class. Dual degrees. Finance and systems engineering. None of it mattered. Because I wasn't legacy enough. Wasn't polished. And definitely not Alden blood, not really. My mother married into the family and they never let her forget it. Or me. "You're bright, Sienna," my Aunt Clarissa had said that day in front of a dozen board members and interns and God knows who else. But we're a bloodline business. Not a charity. I remember the click of her heels as she walked past me. The silence in the room. The pity in my cousin Chase's eyes right before he whispered, "Maybe try a mid-level firm. This place isn't built for you." And just like that, I was dismissed. That was the last time I stepped foot in that building. Until today. The elevator doors opened with a hiss, and there I was again, same high-rise, same skyline, but not the same girl. I walked through the executive floor of Alden and Royce in a tailored suit that cost more than my first used car. My heels echoed off the polished floors like a drumbeat of war. No one recognized me. They wouldn't. That's the point of a ghost. She haunts silently until it's too late. 6 years ago, they sent me away with a handshake and a lie. Today, I return as the CEO of Seraphim Logistics, the company they've unknowingly funneled over $60 million through in the last 18 months. Their largest client. Their lifeline. But they don't know that yet. "We're projecting another strong quarter," Chase announced at the head of the boardroom table, flipping through a gilded presentation. "Thanks to our anchor contract, Seraphim Logistics." I took a slow sip of espresso to hide the smirk tugging at my lips. I remembered that voice, oily with confidence, always one sentence away from condescension. The same voice that told me to aim lower. That pedigree mattered more than performance. Clarissa, Aunt Clarissa, beamed from the opposite end. "This is why we keep leadership in the bloodline," she said, proud and smug. "Chase, you're proving that family is the greatest asset." I lowered my eyes to the tablet in front of me. Hidden among the successes were performance metrics so riddled with fraud they practically screamed. They'd been cooking the books. Hiding losses. Patchworking shortfalls with borrowed time. The only thing keeping Alden and Royce upright was me. And I was done playing savior in secret. "Miss Vale," a voice whispered beside me. Mila, Clarissa's assistant, the only one who ever treated me like more than a shadow, gestured toward the boardroom doors. "They're ready for your presentation." I stood. Straightened my jacket. Walked slowly, deliberately, past Chase, past Clarissa, past every cousin who once laughed when I asked for an internship. Chase blinked, confused. "I'm sorry, this is a closed meeting." I placed my notes at the podium. "I know." Clarissa frowned. "You're not on the agenda." "No," I said calmly. "But Seraphim Logistics is." The room paused. I let it breathe. "I'm here to renegotiate our contract terms before renewal." Her eyes narrowed. "Seraphim always sends a representative." "They do," I replied. "And you're looking at her." Silence. Like a vacuum had sucked the air from the room. Chase's mouth opened then closed. Elise, my cousin in their in-house counsel, dropped her stylus. Clarissa's voice cracked. You run a startup." "We did background checks." I tapped my screen. The wall behind me lit up, the Seraphim Holdings deck. Branded. Audited. Brutal. "This startup is a front. Seraphim Holdings is mine. Has been for 6 years." I let the numbers speak. Revenue, triple theirs. Offices, 12 countries. Clients, 9 Fortune 500 companies. And 72% of Alden and Royce's logistics revenue tied directly to me. "I've been your silent crutch," I said quietly. "While you clinked glasses and gate-kept the family throne, I built an empire you depend on." Gasps. A chair scraped. Chase stood, pale. "This isn't real." "Isn't it?" I turned the slide. "Want to explain the $8.3 million hidden in miscellaneous operational expenditures?" Clarissa stiffened. "Why now?" I smiled, but it didn't reach my eyes. "Because now I decide who gets to stay in the room I was never allowed to enter." The boardroom burst into chaos. Voices overlapping. Accusations flying. Lawyers scrambling. I stood still. Calm. Watching them drown in a storm they couldn't control anymore. Because I was the storm now. "You'll be hearing from our legal team," Clarissa barked. "I hope so," I said. "My forensic audit team has a lot to share." "You're doing this because we didn't let you in," Chase spat. I paused at the door. Looked back at him. "No," I said. "I'm doing this because you never thought I could." And then I left. As the voices behind me dissolved into panic, I stepped into the hallway where Michael, my assistant, my friend, my co-conspirator, waited. He handed me a bottle of sparkling water, eyes dancing. How'd it go? I exhaled. Perfect. Then I looked out over the skyline I used to chase from below. Tomorrow, we burned the rest of it down. The thing no one tells you about revenge is how quiet it is at first. It's not fire and fury. It's spreadsheets at midnight. It's whispering to analysts through burner phones. It's sitting in silence, watching the people who once crushed you smile for photo ops they didn't earn. It's patience. 6 years ago, I walked out of Alden and Royce Global humiliated, underestimated, and practically erased. I didn't scream. I didn't beg. I just walked, and swore that one day, they'd choke on my name. And now? That day was tomorrow. After the boardroom reveal, the messages started pouring in. Blocked numbers. Unknown callers. I ignored them all. Instead, I sat in the private war room we'd set up on the 32nd floor of a hotel across from Alden Tower. Floor-to-ceiling glass. Direct line of sight into their offices. I liked seeing them scramble. Michael pulled up the audit dashboard. Full exposure analysis is in, he said, clicking through encrypted files. 72% dependency on Seraphim contracts. 48% of annual revenue is riding on us. If we walk, they collapse. Good, I said. And the fraudulent filings? He smiled grimly. 8.3 million in false inventory valuations. Deferred revenues. Phantom clients. All traceable. All Chase. I leaned back in my chair. Closed my eyes for a second. The rage wasn't hot anymore. It was cold. Sharp. Clarissa always said business was about instinct. That the Alden legacy lived in the blood. But legacy without accountability? That's just rot in a suit. I grew up in the cracks of that empire. Thanksgiving dinners where Clarissa would talk over my mother like she wasn't there. Summer retreats where I got to sit at the staff table. Even then, I knew what it meant. I wasn't one of them. Just the girl who watched. I remember one time, I asked Clarissa if I could shadow her for a week at the office. She laughed. Told me to try a receptionist role first. The next day, I signed up for an intensive data systems boot camp. That was the day I stopped asking for their permission. You're thinking about her, Michael said quietly. Clarissa. I didn't respond. Instead, I scrolled through the final prep for the audit meeting. Tomorrow at 9 a.m. The moment the veil drops. We'd embedded 4 analysts inside Alden and Royce over the last 3 years. Quietly. Strategically. Each one gathering financial breadcrumbs, tracking every manipulated margin. They thought they were safe because they were family. Because everyone smiled and shook hands. But power doesn't come from blood. It comes from proof. And I had it. That night, I couldn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling of my penthouse suite while memories played like films behind my eyes. Me, sitting on the bench outside the Alden building 6 years ago, blinking back tears while Chase told me not to take it so personally. Me, folding the rejection letter from Clarissa so carefully as if it were a blade. Me, listening to my mom cry behind a closed bedroom door when she found out what her sister had said about me about us. I used every second of that pain to build Seraphim. Not for validation. For leverage. Morning came fast. I walked into the Alden lobby just after 8 a.m. dressed in black. War paint disguised as Prada same security guard from 6 years ago. He stood up so fast he nearly knocked over his coffee. Miss Vale, Miss Seraphim? Sienna's fine, I said, breezing past. He looked like he wanted to apologize. But there wasn't time for apologies now. Funny how recognition shows up late. Always a few exits past the damage. The boardroom was already half full. Clarissa sat at the head of the table rigid. Lipstick perfect. Nails biting into the leather armrest. Her kingdom was cracking and she could smell it. Chase looked like hell, eyes bloodshot, jaw clenched. His lawyer whispered something in his ear and he just nodded, dazed. I paused at the doorway, taking it in. The empire of exclusivity. The polished wood. The family crest on the wall. All of it built to intimidate people like me. I wasn't intimidated. I was owed. Clarissa tried to speak as I approached the podium. Sienna. No more private conversations, I said. Let's keep everything public today. I nodded to my team. Folders slid across the table. Confidential audit packets. Independent verification reports. Timeline charts with Chase's name stamped all over them. I started the presentation. Let's begin with the creative accounting, I said smoothly. 8,347,000 to be exact. Hidden beneath inventory flux and deferred service billing. Gasps. A cough. Someone swore under their breath. Chase's hands trembled. His lawyer reached for a paper. Too late. You think this is war? He snapped finally. You're just doing this because you didn't get a seat at the table. I looked at him. Really looked at him. The boy who always thought he was born to lead. No, I said softly. I'm doing this because you're the reason the table is rotten. Clarissa stood, her voice cold. We'll take legal action. On what grounds? I asked. That your niece outperformed your entire C-suite? That your golden boy doctored financials? I leaned forward. Do it. I'd love to hear what the SEC thinks. A silence fell across the room like ash after a fire. Then the twist I didn't expect. Clarissa's voice cracked. Not loud. Just enough for me to hear. You could have come to me first. I stared at her. You mean like I did 6 years ago? She looked away. That's when I knew she wasn't protecting the company. She was protecting herself. Because if Chase went down for fraud, the board would dig into who signed off. Who ignored it? Who looked the other way? Her name was on more than just the doors. Option A, I said, sliding an envelope onto the table. You remove Chase. Restructure leadership. Cooperate fully. Seraphim stays. And option B? Clarissa whispered. I walk. All contracts terminated. My legal team sends this audit to regulators. And Alden and Royce becomes tomorrow's headline. Chairs scraped. Board members murmured. Chase stared at the floor. You have 1 hour, I said. Make the right decision. Or make history. They always say you can't burn down a house and expect to walk out clean. But no one tells you what it feels like to stand in the smoke and realize the house was already on fire. All you did was light the truth. I sat in the executive lounge of the Alden Tower with my phone face down, untouched. Down the hall, the board was voting. My proposal or the abyss. Their bloodline pride or survival. 1 hour. 60 minutes to decide whether to cut Chase loose or go down with him. And Clarissa? She still hadn't looked me in the eye since I handed her the envelope, which said everything. Michael brought me a fresh coffee. You okay? No, I said. And I don't want to be. He looked at me confused. I don't want to be okay with this. I want to remember exactly how this feels. Every second. Every breath. Because I never want to forget who they made me become just to survive. He sat across from me and nodded slowly. Do you ever regret it? He asked. Building Seraphim. Doing it in the shadows. I stared out the window. The city looked so calm from this high up. Unbothered. Unaware of the empire unraveling below. Only when I remember how much of myself I had to bury to get here. 6 years ago, I trusted people with pieces of me that I should have protected. Clarissa. Chase. Elise. Family dinners where I brought up ideas just to be laughed at. Phone calls where they pretended to help me apply for internships, only to ghost me after. And one night. God. One night, I'll never forget. It was 2 weeks before my Alden rejection. I was at a charity gala working it, not attending. In a black server uniform, tray in hand, trying not to look at anyone I knew. And then I heard Chase's voice. Behind me. Too loud. You see her, he laughed to a group of interns and junior execs. That's my cousin Sienna. Real brainy. Thinks she's gonna run the world. Too bad she can't even get hired. They all turned. Smiled like it was funny. I stood frozen, tray shaking in my hand, champagne glasses rattling. They didn't even see me. I was the joke in the room. The ghost in the uniform. That night, I went home and cried until my throat burned. Then I stopped crying. And started building. My phone buzzed once. A message from Clarissa. Private meeting. My office. Now. I stared at the screen for a moment, then stood. You want backup? Michael asked. I shook my head. I want answers. Clarissa's office was the same as I remembered. All marble and gold. No warmth. No soul. She was already standing when I walked in. Arms folded. Eyes glassy. You really built all that? She asked. Alone? Yes, I said. Alone. She walked to the window. You know. I used to believe in you. When you were younger. You were sharp. Curious. But there's no room for softness in leadership. I narrowed my eyes. You didn't reject me because I was soft, I said. You rejected me because I wasn't yours. Because I wasn't born into the part of the family you approved of. Clarissa flinched. Just slightly. Then she turned back to me. This isn't what I wanted, she said. You bringing the company to its knees. Public scandal. SEC involvement. Chase. Her voice cracked, and for a second I saw the mother behind the CEO. But I didn't soften. I didn't do this, I said. He did. You just covered it up. Silence. She sat down slowly. Do you remember your mother's wedding? I blinked. The question hit out of nowhere. What? She was radiant, Clarissa said, staring into some distant place. So proud. So sure she was marrying into something better. But I remember thinking no matter how hard she tried, she'd never really be one of us. I clenched my fists. She didn't want to be one of you, I said. She just wanted you to treat her like family. Clarissa looked at me then. And I saw it. Guilt. Buried so deep it looked like stone. But there. I saw your application, she whispered. Before the meeting. It was flawless. But I deleted it. I didn't want you competing with Chase. I couldn't risk it. The confession landed like a punch. I'd spent 6 years thinking I failed. 6 years believing I wasn't good enough. When the truth was worse. I was too good. I stood there breathing hard. My entire foundation shifting under my feet. You ruined me to protect him, I said. Clarissa didn't speak. So I turned to leave. Wait, she said. I stopped. What if we made you chair? She asked quietly. Publicly. We name you as our restructuring lead. We make it right. I looked over my shoulder. You can't make it right, I said. But you can step aside. And maybe what's left can still be saved. Back in the boardroom, the vote was cast. Chase, resigned. Clarissa, removed from operational control. Me, appointed as interim chair, pending full transition oversight. Michael passed me the final copy of the vote tally. It's done. But my hands were shaking. Not from adrenaline. From what I just realized. This wasn't about business anymore. Not really. This was about family. Rotten roots. Quiet betrayals. Silent rooms full of smiles and knives. And deep down beneath the cold calculation. I still wanted something I couldn't get. Closure. But closure isn't given. It's earned. That night, I sat alone in the old Alden CEO office, mine now, at least for the interim, and pulled out something I hadn't looked at in years. My mother's last letter. Written before she passed. In it, she said, "If they ever break you, baby, don't stay broken. They only win if you disappear." I folded it slowly. Tomorrow, I'd finish what I started. But tonight, I'd finally let myself feel the grief I buried the day Clarissa smiled and told me I didn't belong. The morning I crossed the line, the sky looked exactly like it did 6 years ago. Gray. Indifferent. The kind of sky that watches empires fall without blinking. It had rained during the night. Now everything outside the Alden Tower gleamed, sidewalks, steel, even the windows. Like the city itself was trying to wash away what was coming. But you can't rinse off rot. You have to cut it out. The boardroom was silent as I entered. Not tense, stunned. Chase was gone. His resignation signed and sealed. Clarissa had been placed on an indefinite leave pending internal review. No one argued. No one fought. I'd expected resistance. Screaming. Threats. What I got instead was surrender. The kind that comes from knowing you've already lost. I looked around the room and something in me cracked. These people weren't mourning a company. They were mourning the illusion of control. The idea that blood was thicker than accountability. That legacy could cover corruption. I took my place at the head of the table, a seat that once belonged to Clarissa. It was still warm. I won't waste your time, I began. Today's meeting has one item, final review of the restructuring plan. That includes full financial disclosures, client renegotiations, and... Sienna, someone interrupted. It was Elise. My cousin. Their chief legal officer. And one of the few who had actually earned her way up the ladder. Before we move forward, she said, I think you should see this. She slid a folder down the table toward me. Unmarked. Heavy. I opened it. And felt the blood drain from my face. Inside were transcripts. Emails. Memos. 6 years ago, after my application was rejected, someone at Alden and Royce had made sure no other firm would touch me. Anonymous references. Quiet blacklists. One-liners slipped into conversations that branded me as a risk, a problem, someone who didn't play well with others. The rejections I thought were bad luck? Manufactured. By Chase. On Clarissa's orders. They didn't just push me out. They buried me. I stood up. Hard. The chair skidded behind me. Everyone froze. I need the room, I said. No one argued. They left in silence. Except Elise. She lingered at the door. I didn't know, she said softly. About any of it. I looked at her. Tried to find the lie. There wasn't one. I believe you, I said. But I don't trust anyone in this building. Then I was alone. With the truth in my hands. And a choice that would define everything that came next. Michael found me 30 minutes later, still standing by the window, fists clenched around the folder. You okay? He asked, like he already knew I wasn't. No. You want to release it? It was the obvious question. We had everything. Proof of blacklisting. Coordinated career sabotage. The kind of corporate malice that destroys lives. Releasing it would end them, he said. Clarissa. Chase. Anyone who signed off. I nodded. But it would make you the villain. That word. Villain. 6 years ago, they made me feel like one for simply wanting a seat at the table. Now I had the whole damn building. And I still wasn't sure if I'd won. Because revenge feels righteous, until you taste the cost. I walked to the elevator. Not the private one for execs. The one the interns used. The same one I rode the day they rejected me. Every button I pushed felt like a scar being reopened. Lobby. Parking. Roof. Roof. I needed air. The wind hit hard when I stepped out. Below me, the city buzzed like nothing was happening. People going to work. Traffic lights blinking in sequence. Lives untouched by the war unraveling inside these walls. And somewhere down there was the younger me. The girl in the off-rack dress. The girl who smiled too much in interviews. The girl who thought being good would be enough. I closed my eyes. And I let her go. My phone buzzed. Michael again. Legal's ready. They'll support whatever call you make. Good, I said. Because I'm about to do something they'll either thank me for or never forgive me. I came back into the boardroom with fire behind my ribs. I'm modifying the plan, I said, sliding the folder onto the table. Chairs shifted. Eyes locked on me. This file contains documentation of internal blacklisting, character assassination, and coordinated interference with my career. Clarissa's name is on it. So is Chase's. Everyone waited. I could feel the storm gathering behind their eyes. But I'm not releasing it, I said. Not unless they force my hand. Shock. Confusion. But we have them, one board member said. Why not finish it? Because I'm not them, I said. I looked each one of them in the eye. I'm not here to humiliate people. I'm here to rebuild what you let rot. And then I crossed the line. I'm not just chairing the restructuring, I said. I'm buying controlling interest. Murmurs exploded around me. Michael stepped in, handing out term sheets. Elise has agreed to manage transitional legal affairs, I added. The remaining board members can either cash out or convert into silent stakeholders under a new model. What model? Someone snapped. One where merit wins, I said. Clarissa wasn't there to watch it unfold. She'd cleared out earlier that morning. Wordlessly. Like a ghost finally giving up the haunting. But I left the folder on her old desk. Unopened. A warning. I wasn't her. But I remembered. Later, as the sun set behind the skyline, I walked into my new office. My name already on the door. Michael was there, popping open a bottle of champagne. You did it, he said, grinning. No, I replied. I did more than that. I pulled out the rejection letter from 6 years ago. Framed it. Set it on my desk. A reminder. Not of pain, but of proof. Because sometimes the only way to stop the disease is to become the cure. Revenge doesn't end with a slam. It ends with a whisper. A single breath. A closed door. The silence after the storm when no one knows whether to rebuild or run. That's where I stood now, on the other side of everything. 2 weeks had passed since I took control of Alden and Royce Global. The headlines were relentless. Legacy empire restructured after fraud scandal. Whistleblower turned CEO, the rise of Sienna Vale. From rejection to power, the woman who outsmarted her own bloodline. But none of them got it right. They thought this was a story about revenge. It wasn't. It was about liberation. My first executive act was simple. I erased every internal hiring policy based on lineage. No more family first. No more secret interviews behind closed doors. Only performance. Only results. I also terminated 4 contracts tied to nepotism-laced vendors. Restructured the board to include 3 external seats. Publicly committed to full transparency with quarterly audits. And not one damn thing passed without going through me. The girl they said wasn't fit to lead now signed every paycheck they cashed. Clarissa tried to reach out. Once. A carefully worded email wrapped in guilt and veiled nostalgia. We should talk, Sienna. There's so much I never got to explain. Families don't always get it right the first time. I read it twice. Didn't reply. Instead, I archived it. Right beside the rejection letter she wrote me 6 years ago. She wanted forgiveness. But she never apologized. And I didn't need closure from someone who only wanted comfort. And then Chase called. That was unexpected. He didn't call from his number, he knew I wouldn't pick up. He called through a restricted line. Left a voicemail I wasn't prepared for. I know I ruin things. I don't expect anything from you. But if you ever wonder whether I regret it, every single day. I do. I was scared. You were better than me, and I knew it. I let Mom twist that fear into hate. I let her turn me into a weapon. I hope you can live free. Even if I never will. I listened to it once. Deleted it. Because regret without restitution is just noise. The real surprise came from Elise. She came to my office one morning with a simple proposal. I want to stay, she said. And I want to help. I studied her. She'd never been cruel. Never mockingly polite. Just silent. Like so many others. You knew what they were doing, I said. You didn't stop them. I didn't think I had power, she admitted. But watching you made me realize silence is complicity. I nodded slowly. You want a fresh start? I asked. Then earn it. She did. Every day after that, Elise showed up early, stayed late, questioned everything. She wasn't family anymore. She was team. The final shift came the day we unveiled the new name. Seraphim and Vale Group. A merger not just in name but in value. Seraphim's infrastructure. Alden's remaining global assets. A new identity rising from the ashes of betrayal. We held a press conference overlooking the harbor. Same view I used to stare at from the outside, back when I was invisible. This time, the cameras were pointed at me. I stepped up to the podium and smiled, not out of pride, but peace. 6 years ago, I was told I didn't belong, I said. That legacy mattered more than merit. That bloodline beatability. That family means loyalty, even when it poisons the truth. They were wrong. You don't need permission to lead. You don't need legacy to rise. And you sure as hell don't need anyone's blessing to become who you already are. When the event ended, I stood alone by the window. The sunset was brutal that night, fiery, unapologetic, glorious. Michael walked up beside me. You did it, he said softly. I looked at the skyline. No, I replied. I became it. The messages from my extended family haven't stopped. You've changed. You didn't have to humiliate them. This isn't what your mother would have wanted. They're wrong. This is exactly what she wanted. Not the destruction. Not the scandal. But the self-respect. She used to tell me. You can't control how they treat you. But you can decide whether they get to keep doing it. So I left one final message in the family group chat. One sentence. No explanation. The family name is safe now. Because it's no longer in your hands. In the weeks that followed, Seraphim and Vale became a symbol of second chances. We hired people who had been passed over by legacy firms. We paid fair, promoted fast, and made it clear you are not your bloodline. You are your impact. Every decision I made was filtered through one question. Would I have been hired here? If the answer was no, the system wasn't good enough. The woman I became isn't soft, isn't cruel. She's precise, ruthless in truth, gentle in justice. I don't flinch when they whisper now. I know what I've built. I know who I am. Not just someone who survived the fire, but the one who learned to walk through it. Sometimes people say the best revenge is success. They're wrong. The best revenge is clarity. Knowing you never needed them. Knowing they never broke you, just taught you how to rebuild. And when they finally see you, really see you, it's already too late.